All right. As I was saying, okay, context, all the stuff around the thing that you're focused on, okay, super important to interpretation and analysis of visual rhetoric. You have to pay attention to the context, which is one of the reasons that I stressed with you in the selection of your image that it has to have a discernible context. There's got to be something going on, something substantial going on that the image is making an argument about, either in the present or in the past. That would be historical context, okay, or in the culture, in politics, in the economy, okay. Rhetorical context means what's the debate about the issue that's being argued in the image. All right, and here's one where rhetorical context is super important to the interpretation and the analysis that one can do of this image. What's the rhetorical context? What's the debate that this image is about?
Legalization of marijuana?
That's it. That's the issue that's being debated, that this image is making a specific argument about. What's the specific argument this image is making?
I guess one could be that alcohol, how it's always been legal for a while, causes more death than marijuana, which was illegal for a long time.
Yeah, and therefore?
I'm not sure.
On what side of the legalization debate do you think this image stands? What's its position?
For the legalization of marijuana.
That's right. That's the therefore. Okay, so alcohol has been legal for a long time, and it's way worse than weed. Therefore, weed should be legal. That's the main reason this argument is giving for the legalization of marijuana, right? That's what it's arguing for. Okay, so could we get that from just these words? And look how fast you guys got that. You guys read this really fast. You read it, right? Really fast. It's a text. Okay, we can't get it from just the words, right? That was a rhetorical question. The answer is no. You can't get it from just the words. You need all of those visual details in the image. That's the evidence. Okay, those details are the vehicle for conveying the argument this image is making. Okay, so let's look at how they do that, how the details convey the argument. All right, I said before that this image is similar in the way it's arranged to the way that we deal with text. Okay, the way we read text. We read left to right, top to bottom, right? So arrangement is a very important element of visual rhetoric in this image. The way the details in the image are arranged. Okay, so that would be something you could talk about in an essay if you're analyzing this image. Okay, so as as is obvious, but as we don't think about, and that's part of the process here, is bringing these things we do automatically and mostly unconsciously into conscious awareness so that we can talk about them. Okay, you start here, right? Obviously, you start here. You guys all did that without even thinking about it. You started here because it's a mental habit that we have. Okay, and then there's a helpful little arrow so we don't have to rely on our mental habits to know where to move next in the image. So we go from here to here, right? And what's going on in this little square? What's going on in there? What are they doing?
Just hanging out.
You guys are going to have to tell me because I don't know anything about this. Okay.
They're passing a joint around.
Oh, a joint? Is that what you call it, Ethan?
Yeah.
Is that what one calls it? They call it a joint? Okay, good. Thank you. All right, I'll put that in my notes. All righty. So they're passing it around, and you can tell these are very crudely drawn little squares, right? But you can still tell what's going on in them. And the crudeness of the drawing is on purpose. Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, what else is going on in this image? What other details are in it?
I guess you could say the time and a poster.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that the clock is important. The poster's important. It's all important. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Who's that? Who's that guy?
Bob
Is
Marley.
that a guy? It's hard to tell, huh? Bob Marley. Oh, but you know who it is, right? And the target audience is going to know who that is. It's not accidental. Why is there a poster of Bob Marley on their wall?
Because he smoked a lot of weed.
Uh-huh. He smoked a lot of weed, or did. He has passed. He passed in the 80s when I was a kid. Alrighty. Okay. Have any of you seen Bob performances on the internet of Bob Marley?
Yeah.
Okay. He's always stoned, isn't he? Okay. In every recorded appearance of Bob Marley, he is intoxicated. Isn't that right? Okay. So he's like, and he openly advocated for the use of marijuana, right? And, you know, he is part of his religion, okay, his Rastafarian religion, alrighty? So he's kind of like the patron saint of marijuana consumption. Do you think that's fair to say? No? Okay, well, anyways, I think so. All right, so all of those details are important. And we'll come back to the square a little bit later. And then what happens? Then we read left to right, so we know we're supposed to go to this one. Okay, first this happens and then this happens. So what's going on in here?
They're stoned.
And what else? How do you know that they are?
Happy.
They appear to be sleeping.
Yeah.
Okay. At the very least, they are definitely slumped down in the couch. And as I said, these are crudely drawn little stick figures, but they still convey a lot. And this body language is way different than this body language, isn't it? This body language conveys that they are stoned. Is that still the term, you guys? Do you guys still say stoned? No, what do you say? You don't know, right? You're like me. You don't know.
Okay. You say blasted if you want to be a bit more comical.
Blasted? Okay. They're something. They're pretty loose. Okay? And look, they all have little smiles on their faces, little half smiles. Okay? And what else is going on in there?
They're eating a lot.
They got the case of the munchies, yeah.
They're eating, or they have eaten, right? Right? They have eaten because they have the case of the munchies. What's that, Ethan? You seem to know a lot about this issue, this topic.
I don't know. That's what a lot of people say when they get stoned.
You just hear, right? You just hear from your friends, right? Or your acquaintances, right? Because you don't have friends that consume marijuana, right? Yeah. Me either. Okay. Anyways, so it looks like they have eaten, right? You can see the stacked boxes of what do you think was in those boxes? Draw on your cultural knowledge. What do people eat when they have the munchies? Pizzas. Okay.
Pizza and chips, it looks like.
Pizza and what?
Chips.
Dips. Yeah, maybe that's some dip. There's a soda thing right there, it looks like. Okay. And shards of pizza on the floor. And the boxes are stacked up. They ate a lot of pizza. As one does, I hear, when you have the munchies. All right, and then what's this in the corner, the lower right-hand corner here? What's that?
A TV.
It's a TV. So they're just passively, peacefully watching TV after having consumed mass quantities of pizza. And they look really happy. And everything ends in friendship and rainbows, right? Look at their little droopy eyelids. Okay? It's all good. All right, and then, so now we're gonna go to the next row. We start here, and what's that?
The bottle of Jack Daniels.
Yes, specifically, right? Why Jack Daniels?
It's whiskey.
Oh, tell me more about that, Ethan. Again, this is something I know nothing about.
It gets you drunk a lot quicker than other alcohols.
Okay.
Liquor.
It's what?
Hard liquor.
Hard
so it's
liquor.
super easy to get drunk off of.
Okay. All right. And this is a giant bottle. What is that, a quart? Jack Daniels. Okay, you know it's not a fifth. Again, I'm told, right? Because they're square and kind of thinner. And this one is tall. They're rectangular. This one's square. Okay, and kind of fatter. All right, so this is a big bottle of hard liquor. What is it, like 80 proof? Something like that. High alcohol content. And then what? What's going on in here?
They're drinking.
They're drinking. Yeah. And what do you notice about this scenario compared to this one?
They're kind of drawing a parallel for a moment there, for contrast for the following slides.
They're drawing a parallel for contrast for the following slides, yes. And there are similarities and differences. If you juxtapose this image with this one, that's on purpose, right? That's on purpose. So what are some important similarities you notice when you compare these two squares?
The communal aspect is there.
Okay, there are 3 people in each square. And it's the same 3 people, isn't it? Even though they're crudely drawn, you can see this one has hair, this one has hair, this one has a sort of oblong face. I don't know if that's the right name for that shape. This one has the same shaped face. It even has a little dent in the top of the head, right? This one has a more oval face, a more elliptically oval face. This is the same head, right? Okay. So those similarities are important. It's the same group of people. What are some important differences that you notice?
One has a joint while the other has alcohol, and the posters.
Okay, the posters are different, right? So this guy's, as we said, the patron saint of marijuana. And this looks like a woman standing next to a gigantic bottle of alcohol. So that's what they worship, right? That's their religion in this image. Okay, we can infer that. Okay, that's symbolism. We're interpreting the symbolic significance of the details in this image. All right, what's another important difference you notice between those two squares?
In the lower one, they each have their own bottle, whereas in the upper one, they're sharing one joint. So it's kind of a difference in consumption.
Yeah, they each have their own giant bottle of Jack Daniels, you guys. That is not a good idea. That's crazy. And then what? Then what happens?
They go drunk driving.
They're waving their bottles and woo! We're going on a car ride. Okay, that's how my dogs would be. Car ride. Yeah, let's go. Okay, but these guys are impaired. They have to be. They have to be impaired. And that's why it's Jack Daniels on purpose and not a big bottle of beer, right? And that's why they each have their own bottle, right? To emphasize the degree of impairment in this image. It's high. They're very impaired. And then everything ends in fire and bloodshed in this image. And you can, look, there's somebody impaled on a tree there. These people are all bloody and the car's on fire, you know. And so then you can compare and contrast these last two squares. Okay, look how much time we spent talking about this image. All of the details matter, okay? And there's more in here we could talk about. Okay, but rhetorical context is what this particular image is here to exemplify in this particular presentation. The rhetorical context is super important to understanding the argument this image is making and then analyzing it. Okay, who do you think the target audience is for this image? Who's it aimed at?
Probably teenagers or young adults,
What makes you say that?
because that's who it's usually aimed at. And it's kind of like, this is the sort of thing that a teenager or a young adult would do. Like, you're not going to see a child doing any of these activities. And since none of these people are obviously old people, we can assume that it probably hits around a more Reckledge age group, which is teenagers to young adults.
Okay. And voting age, though, right? Voting age people? Because this is making an argument about policy, which in this country, at least theoretically, we're all supposed to agree on. Okay, so this is making an argument about a law, okay, and changing the law. So maybe teenagers to young adults, maybe, okay? What are some of the appeals in this image to that target audience? What works with them? Sorry, go ahead.
The communal aspect comes to mind, you know,
Okay.
being a part of something.
Yeah, so socializing, right? And having fun with your friends, okay? Because I don't think we're supposed to think of this group as a family, right? I think we're supposed to think of them as peers, as friends, okay? And I could justify that inference if I wanted to spend more time on that, but I don't. What else? What else? How did we react to this image? Sorry, Eleanor, go ahead.
Okay. I was just thinking that in terms of age groups, the time that it's presented at looks like around 9 p.m. and then it changes to around midnight. So it's a later time setting in the night, which
Okay.
is more common for younger generations, or at least 20 somethings.
Okay, okay, good, good. What else? How did we react to this image? Did you guys think it was funny? I did. I thought it was funny. No, you didn't think it was funny? So go ahead.
I don't want to speak for anybody else, but you know, a lot of these kinds of images have gone around the internet over the years.
I thought it, sorry.
Oh, don't worry about it. I think probably in our age group, it's a message that I think a lot of us are probably familiar with, on some level at least.
Okay, good. The style of it is important. Yeah. It's styled like an internet meme, isn't it? Yeah? So that's probably people who are on the internet a lot and who care about and pay attention to memes are part of the target audience. Good. Okay, that's an aspect of this image I haven't thought about before. Okay, but what I was driving at was the humor in it. Okay, it's not a serious image, is it? It's not making a serious finger wagging, sort of pedantic, I'm going to teach you something argument about marijuana legalization, is it? It's not full of facts, right? It's not trying to tell you that marijuana is good for people who have cancer or joint pain, or right? It's trying to be funny, and so that's part. You can infer from that who the target audience is. Who is it going to work with? This particular image. It's going to work with younger people who appreciate humor. Okay, all right. This one, rhetorical context is important for as well, right? And also place of publication. I'll talk about that. Where this image is going to be seen, where it's being presented is important to identifying how it's being used to make an argument. Okay, so what's the argument this image is making? What's its context? Sorry, I asked you two separate questions at once. What's the issue this image is making an argument about?
I think it's making an argument about global warming.
Yes, right? Okay, the polar bear is a classic poster animal for global warming, right? Because why? What's happening to them as a result of global warming?
The ice is melting and their habitat is slowly going away.
Right. And based on the framing of this image, framing is another important piece of visual rhetoric. What's in and not in the image. We talked a little bit about that when we were talking about the Greenpeace image, okay, the oil tanker image. The way this image is framed, okay, it only shows this polar bear precariously balanced on a, what we can infer is an increasingly diminishing little stub of ice, crouching there, hanging on, we can infer, for dear life, right? Pathos is a super important rhetorical appeal in this image. All right, the target audience is going to be afraid and grieving for this polar bear because they care about it, right? A different target audience. Not everybody cares about polar bears, you guys. I know, it's shocking, isn't it? And unreasonable. Not everybody cares about polar bears. I do. So I'm in the target audience for this image because I give a crap about polar bears. All right, but that's the argument the image is making. It's about climate change, and it's save the polar bears, right? And stop global warming, okay? So that they don't drown. Because the target audience is going to know that polar bears are mammals and need to breathe air. That's why they need ice flows. And there aren't any in this image. All we see is ocean. All right? Okay, so that's the rhetorical context and the argument for this image and the target audience that we just talked about really fast. Okay, place of publication is important here too. All right, so if this image appeared on the Greenpeace website, it would be being used to make the argument we just talked about. Do you guys know what Breitbart.com is? Anybody? Noah, yeah, Breitbart.com. Other folks, do you know what Breitbart.com is?
Are they a Fox subsidiary? Am I right in saying that?
I don't know if they're under the same ownership as Fox, which is Murdoch.
Oh, okay.
News Corp. That's who owns Fox. I think Breitbart is its own entity, but it is in the conservative group of news media. Yeah. So Breitbart is a conservative news website that was founded by a guy named Steve Bannon. Anybody know who that guy? Familiar with that name, Steve Bannon? Who's Steve Bannon? Guys who are nodding their heads. Eleanor, Noah, anybody? Eleanor, who's Steve Bannon?
I've just heard a lot about him on the news.
Okay. Do you have any sense from what you've heard of? Yeah. Does anybody have any sense from what they've heard of that name, who he is and what he's done?
I know he was a political figure of some kind. I want to say, was he a presidential advisor at some point?
Yeah.
Okay.
In the Trump campaign. Okay. So that's important because we're going to interpret the argument that this image was used for to make when it appeared on that website. Okay. They used this image on that website to mock it. Okay. To mock the bear and to mock people who care about the environment. All right. And one of the things they talked about was the framing. Right? They accused this image of being manipulative, designed on purpose to manipulate people into supporting something that's a hoax. They think climate change, there goes my neck. Oh, they think it's a hoax. Okay, so place of publication matters. All right, when this appeared on Breitbart, it was not making the same argument. Does that make sense, you guys? Okay, moving on. This one's about place of publication too, where the image is, okay, so that you can infer who the target audience is and what the issue is that the argument's about. Okay, does anybody recognize this style, if not the artist of this work? No, this is a piece done by a famous street artist.
Banksy.
The Banksy?
That's it. This is a Banksy. Okay, and I say this is a Banksy, like I would say this is a Gauguin or this is a Monet, because he's in galleries. Okay, he has been elevated to high art status because he's really good, and people really appreciate the art that he produces. But he uses stencils to produce his street art. That's why I asked you first about the style, pretty recognizable. You'll see, you know, if you just Google Banksy, you'll find all kinds of very similar looking different pieces on the internet. Okay, but the placement of this particular piece matters a lot to our ability to interpret the argument that it's making, right? Because there are no words here. And the visual details are largely symbolic. They're not meant to be taken literally. They're symbolizing something else, okay? So that's what all of this stuff says. It says you need to know the location of the image, where it's going to be seen, in order to identify the context for the argument, what the issue is that the image is arguing about. Let me escape here. Come on, escape. I want to escape. Trying to escape. There we go. God, why do I have to press escape 50 times? All right, so here's the little note in the slideshow that explains where this image is. It's on the Palestinian side of the wall that Israel put up between its territory and Palestinian territory. All right, it's on the West Bank part, on the Palestinian side of that wall. Are you guys familiar with the situation there in that part of the world? Anybody know what's going on between Israel and Palestine? Anybody?
Well, the Palestinian side is the West Bank, which is segregated from the Israeli side, which is run by Benjamin Netanyahu, who is supported by the US. So therefore the Israeli settlement is supported by the US.
Okay,
so
you mentioned You mentioned settlements, right? That's one of the important things that's going on in that part of the world. All right, do you guys know how Israel was created, how it came to be? Go ahead, tell me about that.
Britain, after World War II, gave the Jewish people a portion of land in that region because they had guilt about post-World War II.
Yeah, so the Allied forces that prevailed in that conflict gave somebody else's land, right, to Jewish people so that they could form a state, a homeland for themselves, right? And you know, there are reasons to have mixed feelings about that, whether you support it or not. It's a complex issue, okay? But the fact of the matter is that there were people there before, Palestinians, who considered that to be their homeland. And so there's a dispute over that territory. And the Palestinians have been resisting, sometimes violently, right, the appropriation of their land, or what they consider to be their land. And the Israelis are pushing farther and farther and farther into Palestinian land with their settlements. The settlements are Jewish people are going to live where Palestinian people were living before, after the Israeli army pushed the Palestinians out and drove them from their homes. Okay, sometimes they demolish the homes and build new ones. Sometimes they just move in to some Palestinian's house. Okay, so it's complex, and there has been violence. So the Israelis have used that violence, the violent resistance of the Palestinians to that occupation, which is how they think of it, by erecting a wall to prevent like munitions coming in to Israel and to keep, you know, terrorist attacks from happening, to try to prevent them. They put up this big concrete wall. All right. And so Banksy has something to say about that. That whole context is important to understanding this argument that Banksy is making. Okay, let me make it big again. What's his argument about that? And in your essay, if you were analyzing this image, you could do a whole paragraph where you explain the context, which sets the scene for your analysis of the visual rhetoric. It's why the details mean what they mean, because of the context. Okay, so what's the argument this image is making, and how do the details convey that argument?
I think it kind of shows the inequalities between the two sides because, like, in some ways, it's representing an income disparity in terms of there's these people who are the two younger males in the picture, and they look like they're kind of working or doing stuff, and meanwhile there's this other side where it's a beach, where it's paradise and it's happiness.
That's right. Yeah. So this tropical scene here represents paradise, right? When we think of paradise, don't we think of this? On a tropical beach somewhere with a Corona. Sorry, advertising culture, right? or some cold beer, right? Sipping some cold, or, you know, a cocktail, a daiquiri or something, right? Okay, that's paradise. Okay. These two little guys, I don't know if they're working. They've got their little pails and shovels, and we infer that they're boys because they're shirtless, right? But I think they're trying to play. Do you guys agree? Okay, but they could be working, but I think because they're children, and I think the children having them be children is on purpose on the part of Banksy. If they were adults, we wouldn't care as much about them, would we? We're like, oh, you're on your own once you're an adult. Figure it out, you know? But little kids were like, oh, they're babies. We need to save them, right? They should be playing in this area, not in all this trash, okay? Not in these rocks and trash and weeds, okay? So Banksy is saying that these Palestinian children are being excluded from the rightful paradise that exists for them on the other side of this abominable wall. This wall is an abomination. Okay, unfairly preventing these children from their birthright, which is to play in the sand on a beach. Okay, and we could say a lot more about this. The cracks in the wall, okay, the other details, of barbed wire fence. You know, Banksy is incredible. I don't know how he did this. There's a barbed wire fence here. This is one of the most heavily guarded places on the planet, you guys, okay? This in Disneyland. Banksy got a piece in Disneyland too, in Anaheim. Did you guys hear about this some years ago? He jumped the fence on the Gold Rush. Have you guys been to Disneyland and ridden the Gold Rush? It's one of the iconic rides in Disneyland. I love it. It's my favorite. It's just a fun roller coaster. It's not terrifying like that other one, the California Screamin'. Although I think they changed the name of that. Anyway, whatever, it doesn't matter. Okay, he got in there somehow, right? And put something up. And then it was discovered really fast because they're on it at Disneyland. Have you guys been standing in line at Disneyland and you dropped some wrapper off some crappy piece of food that you bought there for too much money? And, you know, all of a sudden there's somebody behind you sweeping it up. And you're like, where did that person come from? Okay, they're on it at Disneyland. Okay, anyway, enough about Banksy, moving on. All right, so this is a different kind of context, right? This has a rhetorical context. There's an argument kind of about this issue, but I'm calling this cultural context because it's about a problem that's going on in the culture. All right, what is the culture? What is the problem that's happening in our culture that this image is about?
The addiction to meth.
Yeah, that's the problem, meth addiction. So that's the context for this argument that this image is making. It's about that problem. That's what it's about. Okay, and you know, you can find out some more about this image, that this is about meth use. And I'm being careful not to say abuse, right? Because you can't even use meth. It says not even once, right? One time and that's it. Okay, you're addicted. So that's a problem in Montana, apparently. Okay, not that it isn't a problem elsewhere, but the target audience for this image is Montanans. All right, so that we inferred that. Okay, who else is in the target audience? And so this is about cultural context and audience. Okay, what's going on in the culture affects a particular group, and how that particular group is being targeted by the details in this image, and how we can infer that from what we know about our culture. Does that make sense? Did everything I just say make sense? We've been talking about cultural knowledge since the beginning of class when we looked at the Johnsons, and how we use that, okay, to understand all kinds of messages, including visual ones. Okay, so how is a particular target audience being targeted by this image? What audience? Who's the target audience for this image? And how can your knowledge of culture help you infer that?
Well, the fact that they're mentioning virginity implies probably a youth sort of age bracket. They're leveraging, I think, the often somewhat elevated, sort of overblown concept of virginity to sort of get into the minds of the people that they're trying to change the minds of. And here they are doing that.
Yeah, and you just said a whole bunch about culture, right? You just said that in this culture, okay, people are virgins when they're young, not when they're older. That is rare, that a person has not had sexual intercourse. That's what it means to be a virgin, right? When they're older. Okay, it's becoming increasingly rare, younger and younger, right? Which is going to help us, because we know that about our culture. It's going to help us zero in even more on the target audience. Okay, so what else? No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
The demographics of Montana, if you want to look at a subculture, it's a very religious place, which places a lot of weight into purity concepts and virginity. And so it's kind of talking to parents who are religious, you know, save your kid from meth and the devil.
Okay, so that's really interesting. I didn't know that about Montana, but that would be a piece of research that you guys could do on your image. Something like that, okay, might help you interpret the argument your image is making. Eleanor, you think parents are the target audience for this image?
Yeah, just because if virginity is something people are afraid of, they're usually afraid of it on behalf of their children. They want their children to be quote unquote pure.
Uh-huh.
And so if meth is what's gonna destroy their child and take away their purity, I think it speaks to a kind of pathos for parents of protect the children.
Okay, all right. That's a good rationale for that interpretation. Okay, and I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't dispute that if you wrote about that in an essay about an image like this. Okay, I think there's a different specific target audience for this image, but that's not to you know, dismiss your interpretation. It's valid. You just defended it, so that's good. All right, so what do you guys think I think is the specific target audience for this image? The text says, and the text helps, it says, no one thinks they'll lose their virginity here. Meth will change that. So the text assumes that virginity is going to be lost, right? It's gonna happen. Okay, so what target audience is on the verge of or considering the circumstances under which they might lose their virginity? What target audience?
Usually teenagers, I feel like, or people in high school.
Right.
Adults.
In this culture, right? Yeah. And, you know, in high school or middle school, you know, again, I'm using my cultural knowledge to infer that, what I know about how kids are behaving these days in our culture and what they're doing. There goes my neck. Okay. I am the parent of, you know, my youngest is 19 now. And so I know what this culture does to kids in terms of its sexualization of them earlier and earlier, especially, God damn it, sorry I cussed in Zoom, thanks to the internet, you know? Okay, nobody is safe from messages about what you should be doing with your body. Okay, anyway, I won't go on a long rant about that, at least not today. All right, but that's part of the target audience. Okay, we're able to infer that this is aimed at those people. All right, so younger people, right? Okay, based on those criteria that we just discussed. What kind of younger people and why are in the target audience for this image? What else can you infer about the target audience? We talked about their age. What are some other demographic criteria that you can infer from the details in this image? Remember we listed some last week? What's that last week? It's hard to tell.
Aren't like women more, or girls that tend to romanticize in our culture, like the losing of your virginity is special in some special place, and it's special in general. And so that would, and this is like a super gross. I mean, I don't know, men's or women's bathroom because of the stalls, doors missing and stuff. But it's supposed to probably be like jarring, you know, because you have this romantic, like, I'm in control of when this happens. And this is like, maybe not, maybe it's going to be in this gross place.
Right.
If you do miss. So it's scaring you a little bit there.
Yeah, all on purpose. Okay. So do you guys agree that females, young females, are the main target audience for this image? Okay. And I'm not saying that it won't work with others. Okay. Like parents, Eleanor. A parent could see this and go, oh my God. Okay. I don't even want my kid to lose their virginity. And if they do, it shouldn't be like that. It should be after they're married, right? After they're married. Okay, but if you're a young girl, as Susie was mentioning, how are you going to be imagining that moment when you lose your virginity? What's it going to look like, you guys? And guys, you know this, you're part of this culture.
Well, there's a lot of cultural pressure around it, around this concept. You know, there's a lot of sort of unspoken or spoken expectations through, you talked about media and the kinds of things that people are now being told about what's expected of their body or what they need to do with it. And this is a pretty big subversion, I think, of what people are generally told about this kind of event in their lives. I also wanted to mention that I think the image itself also kind of plays into the age demographic too, because regardless of the meth aspect, obviously that's central to this, but most people in the age range where they're thinking about this, at least in the way we're analyzing it, in sort of the teenage age range, they live at home, and if they're planning to engage in this kind of thing, I don't think they want to be doing it where their parents are. So I think this also kind of implied the fact that, you know, you're going to be somewhere that isn't your house to do this. If you're an adult, even if you are meth addicted, chances are you have your own place with some privacy to sort of go about this. I don't know if I expressed that very well, but
no, that all makes sense to me. Okay, yeah. So it's not anybody's home, right? So that helps to support the inference that it's younger people, right? And they can't go get a motel because they're underage, right? And they probably can't afford it, right?
Yeah.
So, but if you're a female in this culture, Noah, you touched on this. I just want to push on it a little bit more. Mm-hmm. What do you imagine the moment of losing your virginity to be like? Give me some specifics, you guys. What is as Noah mentioned, what kind of media messages do girls get about the circumstances under which this should happen? What's it look like?
I feel like the movies and stuff portray it to be very romantically with roses.
There we
go. Stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. So you said romantic, And then I was going to push you for more details, but then you mentioned roses. So good. Now we're on the right track. Okay, roses. What else? There's flowers. What else? What else does, what other details can you call upon from your cultural knowledge to imagine what the scene should look like? How a young girl is going to imagine losing her virginity, how she's going to romanticize it specifically.
You're definitely in love, right? You're like a boyfriend or somebody you know. Who would probably not take it as some place like this. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there's some kind of courting that happened prior.
Right. Okay. Eleanor, go ahead.
I was just thinking, yes, safe in terms of you would feel safe. And then also, I think a bed is usually more typical than a bathroom.
There should at least be a bed. Shouldn't there? Can we get a bed, please? You know,
Yeah.
And you guys are being very, very frugal. But, did girls, Disney princesses, anybody fan of the Disney princess as a child? No? Just my child? None of you? Fellas, any sisters or yourselves fans of Disney princesses? Thank you for nodding your head, Dahlia. Thank you. Yeah, she's the only one willing to own up to liking Disney princesses as a child. Okay, but my daughter was Cinderella for Halloween, and then she was Snow White, and she had all the dang dolls and all the movies and all the songs, right? And the Disney princesses, their lives were very romantic. They had princes who swept them away to their castles, and a high floor in a hotel, in a fancy hotel. I can do this. I know you guys can do this, right? With champagne chilling in a bucket of ice, right? And a beautiful view spread out before you of the city or maybe the ocean. Okay, rose petals on the bed. Okay, room service, soft ambient jazz playing in the background, beautiful lighting, right? The antithesis of this, right? And imagining, that is important to understanding how this visual rhetoric is designed to work with the target audience, because this is the exact antithesis. It's an appalling antithesis to how the target audience imagines this moment. And all of the details are on purpose. The lack of any privacy, as you guys mentioned, as Eleanor mentioned, right? The filthiness of this place, as Susie and others have mentioned, okay? The harshness of it, it's totally anti-romantic on purpose. And we're using our culture. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but it's very drab looking.
It's fine. That's Zoom. Zoom sucks.
Yeah. And you mentioned privacy. I think somebody mentioned, I forgot who it was, but the big thing is a sense of feeling safe. And I feel like step 0 to feeling safe is privacy. And there's not even there's just none of that.
Right. This looks like the potential scene of a sexual assault.
Yeah.
Right? Or the kind of thing someone would do if they have totally lost their judgment under the influence of meth. And that's the argument the image is making. Okay, to its target audience who cares about this because they have been taught by our culture to care about it and to imagine it quite differently. Does that make sense? Look how much time we spent talking about this image, and we could spend more talking about it. Okay? But cultural context and audience, we're going to spend a little bit more time on. And that's because, as I may have mentioned before but can't remember, identifying the target audience and theorizing about it is super important to the analysis you need to do and evaluation of the visual rhetoric. Did it work? So there are two parts to your essay. Analyze it, how's it intended to work, and then evaluate it. Did it do a good job? Was it successful in targeting successfully and persuading its audience? Okay, so all of these words are about how marketers use these words and these words, which you can read for yourself in detail if you want. But they're all about how marketers use celebrities to sell their products to a particular target audience. And the reason they do that is because the celebrities themselves are products. Celebrities package and present themselves in a particular way for particular demographics, particular target audiences who are interested in the same things, who care about the same things, who believe in the same things, who have the same attitudes about things. Okay, so age, gender, economics, all of those demographic criteria that we talked about earlier last week are important to crafting a message, an advertising message, which is the main argument is to buy our product, right? And the audience is like, why should I buy your product? And the argument the advertisers are trying to make is because you need and want it. So they have to persuade them that they need and want it because it goes with their life. Okay, does that make sense, you guys? Yeah, it goes with their life. All right, it appeals to what they care about. All right, so let's see. And by appealing to their subconscious values, beliefs, concerns, etc. Okay, so we're going to identify the target audience for this image. I assume you guys are all familiar with the Got Milk campaign because most, if not all of you, are products of public school and have spent time in cafeterias where these posters are all around, okay, or have seen these in other areas of your life. The whole campaign. All right, and I said last week that you're going to see advertising messages for the same product that are completely different because they're aimed at different audiences. All right, so who's this one aimed at? What audience?
Kids, young kids.
And you can infer that from what you know about the culture. Okay, cultural values. So it's aimed at kids, all kids?
Well, mostly for kids.
Sorry, say that again. Was that you, Ethan?
Yeah, mostly for kids. I mean, I know some older people still like superheroes or Marvels, so it could refer to them as well, but it's mostly pointing towards kids.
Okay, mostly pointing towards kids. Okay, is there, and it's because this is a comic book superhero that is imaginary. It's not real. My husband is a big fan of the Hulk and all the different iterations of the Hulk. He's very into the Maestro right now. Okay, anybody familiar with that personality of the Hulk? Okay, so Hulk has multiple personalities. You guys didn't know that? Yeah, it's one of those things I wish I didn't know, that I live with someone who cares a lot about that, so I'm going to know it. All right, and I hear a lot about it all the time. Okay, so this is aimed at kids, and I sort of gave you a clue leading you to the answer for the next question that we have to ask about this image, and that is what kids?
It's probably boys.
Yes, it's boys, right? It's not girls. It's not little girls, right, you guys? I'm sorry, have I been yelling? Can you still hear me now that I'm speaking more softly? Good. Yeah, it's little boys. Why? What visual details allow you to infer that or support that inference that this is aimed at boys?
Well, the sort of basic perception of, at least in the American world, of masculinity is like the association of, strength or whatever, brute force in a sense, which is, I always thought was a bit strange, but the Hulk kind of represents that wholeheartedly, is like this aura of just pure power. I'm sure we all met or have had young boys in our lives that are really enamored with the concept of strength And I don't think that's necessarily innate. I think that's informed by stuff like this, and it's backing that up, that appeal.
Yeah. Yes, that's it. Okay, so you just use your cultural knowledge to infer who the target audience is and why. It's because little boys have been taught to value strength, right? And Hulk is the excessive embodiment of that value. Strength, and what else? What other qualities does the Hulk have? That are anger and aggression. Yes. Okay. Anger and aggression are his biggest character traits. That's what makes him the Hulk. Is when he gets mad, right? Bruce Banner turns into that. Don't make me mad. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. The Hulk says. Again, one of those things that I'd probably be better off not knowing. But I guess it helps. It helps me to know things about culture. I shouldn't complain. I should be grateful, right? Okay. Anyways, Hulk is everywhere in my house, you guys. All right. So that it's little boys, and it's because of masculinity, which is a cultural thing. That's part of our culture. So we're using the stuff we know about our culture and cultural values to interpret and analyze this image, right? And the small text helps, right? But we don't really need it. The visual rhetoric says it all. The framing of this image, okay? His body is so big it doesn't fit in the frame, right? The look on his face is aggressive. The small text says, milk make bones strong, bones no break when Hulk drink milk. Is that a decent Hulk? No? I'll work on it. Okay, but it's all aimed at little boys. Okay, take a look at this one. Same product, right, you guys? Different target audience, right? Who's the target audience for this image? Really fast.
Teenage girls.
Teenage girls. Very specifically teenage girls, right? Okay, and this is the old Taylor Swift. She doesn't look like this anymore because she has repackaged herself for a different audience. Okay, she wears black leather now and dark makeup. That's the new Taylor Swift, right? Okay, but this Taylor Swift from some years ago was trying to appeal to a young, middle school, preteen, and teenage audience, right? With everything in this image is designed to appeal to that audience because of what they care about, what they value, what they're interested in, right? And how do we know that? Because we know our culture. So what are some cultural values that are represented in this image? The value of
skinny women.
That's right, thinness.
Opposite. It wants you should be leaner, you should exercise.
So you're getting that from the small text, right? They use the word leaner on purpose, and we'll come back to that. So I put it in bold, right? The text talks about leaner. It talks about low-fat, fat-free milk. Nothing in here about that, right? Nothing. Bring on the fat. It doesn't matter to boys. It matters a whole hell of a lot to girls, right? That's why it's being emphasized here. Okay, but it's not about being lean, right? That language is on purpose because they don't want to say what they really mean, which is that you need to be skinny, low fat or fat free. Okay, you don't want to have any extra stuff on your body. We want to be able to see your bones. You want people to be able to see your bones. And the culture tells you that, okay? It tells you that from the moment you have consciousness, if you're a girl. Okay, thinking back to the princesses. Were any of them larger women? No, they're all tiny, 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 tiny women with big breasts. I don't know how that works, okay? All right, but Taylor Swift, this image, this presentation of her, everything in it is on purpose, is designed on purpose to appeal to that cultural value, to reinforce it and to use it to sell milk. The people who made this image know that that's what little girls care about, young girls care about being skinny. All right? And what else? What other cultural values are being represented in this image?
Well, it opens up with the perception of decisiveness, which is kind of strange because the rest of it's not really about that. It just kind of opens with that and then uses that as its platform to explain to you why you need to be a certain way. It's kind of odd. I see you're circling something here. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
I'm doing my curse. I'm sorry, I'm not distracting from what you're saying, but you're referencing the text again, right?
Yeah.
And you made an interesting point, very interesting, which I will come back to, because the visual rhetoric, okay, and I just noticed this because you brought it up, so thank you. It's an aspect of this image I hadn't noticed before, you guys. There's so much going on in here, okay? But her body language does not convey decisiveness, does it? Her body language conveys a different social value for females. What does her body language convey?
Confidence.
Confidence, does it?
She's like being kind of seductive.
Yeah, that too.
Flirtatious, yeah.
Confidence in what, Megan? Let me just stick with that. That was you, right, Megan?
I agreed with what she said. I don't know who said it, but yes, I agree.
Oh,
Seductiveness.
I just said she was being seductive.
okay, who said she was being confident? Because that's not wrong. Was that you, Gabby? No? All right. I couldn't hear whoever that was because their voice was breaking up a little bit. But
I said she looked confident.
Is Megan.
Yes.
Megan. Okay, thank you, Megan. That was you. Okay. I thought I saw your little box light up. That's how I know who's speaking when I can't see your face. Yeah, but she's confident in her seductiveness, right? Those things aren't contradictory. She's very confident in her ability to seduce you, to seduce the viewer. And what reads seduction to you guys? What is seductive about her body language? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just her hand positioning and like how she's kind of looking at the camera, her eye position, head position, just kind of like a seductive look.
That's right.
It's the cut of her dress as well.
Okay, good. Okay.
It's just very low neckline, very flimsy and gauzy.
Yes. Okay. Her body language, what she's wearing, okay, the tilt of her head, the half smile. I mean, she doesn't have to smile like that, you guys. She's got a human mouth, right? She can make a full smile. If she's really into milk, why isn't she going, milk is great? Because that's not seductive. That little half smile is seductive. The tilt of her head, the positioning of her hand, the slightly slumped shoulders, right? She's not being assertive. She's being seductive, okay? You can't be, if you're a woman in this culture, you can't put yourself out there too much, okay? You don't want to alienate your audience, okay? Assertive women are you know, we're not comfortable with them. We think of them as aggressive, okay? All right, so she's trying to assert something, but not too much, right? And everything in here, so it's ironic that they say decisive, right? Because the visual rhetoric doesn't support that, okay? So what else? Noah noticed that I was circling her head. What other
She's got
cultural?
this angelic, like, you know, she's all in the same color. It's all kind of white. It's this ethereal, pure kind of, and, you know, with the lighting being as it is, like coming down from heaven, angelic sort of thing, sort of look.
Good. I'm glad you brought up the lighting because you said angelic and I was going to ask you why, right? What conveys that? Okay. So when you're doing your own analysis, your own interpretation, you need to give the interpretation of what the details mean, but then you need to specify what details support that inference. Does that make sense, you guys? Okay, so it's the light that gives her that ethereal, angelic glow. It's the uniformity of the color scheme here, right? That sort of pale, that gives her that sort of sense of purity. And youth. Youth is another cultural value that is being heavily represented here. Okay, so thinness, youth, okay, blondness, you guys, right? That's why I was circling her. One of the reasons I was circling her head is the fact that she's blonde is not accidental for this target audience. Because what do we know about our culture? There are plenty of dark-haired celebrities that could have been in this ad. And there are other ads for milk that feature dark-haired female celebrities. This one's got a blonde in it. How come? All the dark-haired women in this meeting, and even the light-haired ones. Okay, why is there a blonde in this image? And the men. Okay.
Surely that's just a standard in the United States, light hair, light eyes, light skin.
That is, sorry, Gabby.
That's okay.
That's the feminine ideal for us in this culture, right? Is blonde, you know, pale, slightly tan now. You got to have a tan, which isn't good for you if you're blonde. You shouldn't be trying to get a tan, okay? It's not good for you. All right. But yeah, this is the feminine ideal, and that is our culture. We're using our cultural knowledge to help identify the target audience and interpret the argument this image is making to them, and the way it's using cultural values to persuade the audience to drink milk. Does that make sense, you guys? And there's more we could say about this image. The acoustic guitar, the background, okay, but we need to move on. Let me check my time here. Eep! Crap. This meeting is over at 12:30. No? What time? 12:30? Did I go over? Oh my God, you guys, you have to tell me. Okay, let me escape. You could chat at me if you didn't want to interrupt my rants. Let me stop sharing. Okay, I am so sorry to keep you over. I know you guys have places to be. All right, don't let me do that in the future. Feel free to interrupt me, okay, for any reason. Okay, let me just quickly look at my agenda. You know what? I'll look at my agenda and I'll make you guys a video if there's anything I need to talk to you about. And there is. I need to talk to you about some things. But I'll make you a video, okay? And I'll let you go. Sorry.
Thank you.
See you guys next week. All right. Bye.